Dead Rising before Dead Rising. Castlevania meets Dead Rising. These are apt ways of describing Vampire Panic. It's a 2004 PS2 title that never saw release outside of Japan. A niche title tucked away amongst the mammoth library of the PlayStation 2. Thanks to a fan translation in 2020, which can be a bit spotty, you can now play it in English. Is it some tucked away hidden gem lost to time? Not quite. It does have its shares of frustrations, but it does scratch a similar itch to Dead Rising. A certain itch that few games can scratch. The act of rounding up helpless civilians to escort through dangerous territory can be engaging, thrilling, chaotic, and at most times frustrating. But it does have a few unique twists up its sleeve to keep you on your toes at all times. There's always something fascinating about playing long-forgotten titles that never saw release outside of Japan. I've covered several on the channel. Vampire Panic is another one to add to the list. If you're into games like Dead Rising, you owe it to yourself to give Vampire Panic a spin. Before beginning, thanks to the fellow Boulder punchers who give extra support to the channel through Patreon, YouTube memberships, or one-time donations. If you're interested in supporting, check the pinned comment or description. Let's kick things off here with the opening cutscene. A couple of warriors face off with a shadowed figure, one that makes short work of them. We then get a text crawl for some exposition. The year is 1806. A kingdom has sealed off a vampire. The seal is now broken and laying waste to a nearby village. ISLA, a group that fights creatures of the night, sends two of their own to deal with this evil. Oh, and the town's name is Incel, with an S. Bit unfortunate to have a name like that. It took me out of the experience for a bit, but there will be more of that to follow. We cut to our two ISLA members sent off to town. Rusty, a blonde, ponytailed swordsman, and Mary, our resident monk. Deliverer of fists and kicks, rocking an eye patch and a plunging neckline. The guards won't let us in until Santino arrives. He's one of the higher-ups, the director of intelligence. He's been expecting us. Going back to that thought of the game taking me out of the experience with the name of Incel, if you've been reading the text on screen so far, you may notice the clunky dialogue. Odd grammar, word usage, structure. As mentioned, Vampire Panic never saw an official Western release. This is a fan translation from 2020. There was only one iteration of the patch. Could have used another pass or two. Feels like the translator dropped into something like Alta Vista Babelfish and didn't review it. Now, more often than not, I knew what was being said. Your brain will fill in some of the blanks or recognize a wrong word here or there. Or three. There were a couple of conversations where I had a little clue of what they were getting at, but that was the exception and not the norm. I'm glad someone took the time to do this translation, but could have used a few more eyes and a couple of revisions in another release. Nothing gets into all your base are belong to us territory, but it sure is noticeable. Another thing you may have noticed here is this game's noise filter. I wasn't a fan of it, so I did turn it off moving forward. Most of the dialogue is through text. Our characters will have voice blurbs in combat or when we switch characters, but that's about it. On the topic of sound, this game has fantastic music. Very cozy, very JRPG-like. Very Baroque feel to everything here. Mary mentions that Jin is looking for us and will be waiting for us on the edge of town. He's one of those two figures we saw getting beat up by that shadowy figure in the game's intro. But before that, we could wander around town and talk to the citizens. Some are out and about, others are inside their homes. You will want to talk to citizens a few times over to make sure you've exhausted all dialogue. They could give hints amongst their chats if you can decipher the spotty translation. Can be a bit annoying talking to those in homes. There's a brief loading pause, you'll knock at the door, we'll come out and talk. Want to make sure you exhaust all dialogue? Do the same thing again. Once they go back inside, knock on the door, have them come out again, rinse and repeat. A bit annoying to say the least. Although it's not like the load times are too long here or anything. Still, something worth mentioning. One notable citizen is Sophia, with a group of admirers outside her door, calling her a goddess, although she seems to be quite into Rusty here, calling him a love doll followed by stars. Alright then. Holly, the nun, will tell us about the nearby castle. Castaneda was its lord. Rumors are that he has returned as this shadowy figure, this vampire, and the reason for the surrounding areas to be full of monsters. The town section will serve as a bit of a safe zone, at least for now. After talking with the town, we'll hear some commotion outside of it. This citizen here seems a bit suspicious with glowing red eyes, does he not? Before we reach safety, he'll turn to what looks like a Nosferatu. We are unable to save him, but we still have time to save others. There's a nearby shelter with Jin waiting for us. He'll heal up the other citizens in tow and free them from their curse, or a bug as the game puts it. Again, I'm not sure if that's a translation issue. Mary mentions a bug as a vampire servant. Wouldn't that be more like a ghoul then?
Jeez, oh man! And they're a ghoul. Ooh, watch out.
Regardless, Jen fills us in with what's going on here. The vampire sealed away has once again awoken. We need to get the magical stake from the nearby castle to deal with him. Abby, the gunslinger we saw from the intro who plunged off a cliff, is missing. His fate unknown. Jen suggests we go out and look for him, and find any other citizens along the way. The town won't let people outside of it back in, but Jen will use the shelter here to keep them safe. And so, Vampire Panic begins proper. Vampire Panic works as follows. We'll head out to a nearby area to find and rescue the townsfolk and bring them back to the shelter where Jin is. These areas include the nearby woods, a castle, catacombs, and a dungeon. At the shelter, we could swap between the three amigos we could play as. Rusty, Mary, and once we find him, Abby.
やっぱり慣れないことをやってるな。みんなを励ましていてくれ。マリーなら。
The game uses a fixed camera, but not tank controls. There are loading zones between stretches, which we can use to our advantage if played right. Amongst rescuing the townsfolk, we will have to deal with monsters. Ones that wouldn't look out of place of the earlier stretches of a Castlevania game. Bats, wolves, headless creatures. Combat is your standard hack and slash affair, although a bit loosey-goosey. You can lock on to enemies, but that's not a guaranteed strike. Unless you're playing as Abby, you'll want to lock on with him to hit enemies with your gun. This can be a frustrating affair when you deal with several enemies at once. But in those cases, you could use a more powerful attack that offers crowd control, although it will burn up some stamina. Which is a generous resource. Unless you're throwing out those powerful crowd control attacks on the regular, you don't have to worry about running out of it. Standing still or using items can restore it. You can also upgrade your total stamina along with your health through items we'll find out in the wilderness. Each of our three playable characters has a unique ability through the R1 button. Rusty can block enemy attacks. Mary transforms into what I like to call Dante mode, as her hair turns white. She gets a couple of extra attacks in her combo. She also moves faster. The only drawback in this mode is that it burns up more stamina and doesn't recover while standing still. I did find myself playing her more often as the game progressed. That extra movement speed does help when the game gets a bit backtrack heavy in its closing stretch. Abby's unique ability with R1 is reload his gun. Playing through Vampire Panic, I didn't have a clear favorite throughout. In the tighter spaces, I found Mary or Rusty the go-to for choices. The more open stretches outdoors, Abby with his long distance became my go-to. I brought up earlier how much Vampire Panic reminds me of Dead Rising. That feeling is most apparent when rescuing the townsfolk. You'll find them tucked away in corners or surrounded by enemies. The worst is in areas like the castle. You'll enter a room, have a couple of townsfolk and a handful of enemies to deal with. Citizens have varying levels of health and stamina. It doesn't take much for them to die. And yes, they can die from friendly fire. I had many a case of this happening, especially in these tight rooms. It's oh so easy to hit a civilian with one of Mary's or Rusty's combo strikes. Abby can have more control with his gun, but still easy to hit a citizen when you meant to hit a monster. If they take a hit, they'll like to run around like headless chickens before depleting their stamina. Once you get them to calm down and clear an area, then you can command them to follow or wait. As brought up earlier, Vampire Panic has loading zones. Enemies will respawn when we move between them. So it's not like you clear a path once and you're golden. You'll have to evade or deal with enemies coming back. The best approach is to move the civilians to a different loading zone, tell them to wait there, then clear the way forward. Then you end up doing what I like to call the escort shuffle. You know how it can be in these kind of games. Move forward a short distance, pause, and wait for the civilians to follow. You may need to nudge them along, but for the most part, their pathfinding wasn't much of an issue. That said, civilians won't always go with you when you find them. Some refuse to follow us unless we have their spouse, their kids, or parents in tow. There was one case where a couple refused to follow Abby or Rusty, but did go with Mary. Before you know it, you may have a conga line of civilians in tow as you make the trek back to the shelter. To make things easier, you can carry children, although this will disable your dodge roll. There are bonuses you get from bringing back whole groups intact to the shelter where Jin resides. Rewards include new weapons or upgrade materials to increase our damage output or critical chances. But what about that vampire? And what's this alert bar in the top right corner? This is Vampire Panic's unique flair that can lead to engaging, chaotic scenarios. This bar will increase as we move about. Combat with enemies will increase it. Moving with civilians in tow will increase its speed. We will come across these plants or mandrakes in outdoor stretches which we could pull out from the ground. We could use them to heal up or for health and stamina upgrades. They make quite the noise when we pull them out of the ground, leading to a noticeable jump in our alert meter. Although it is funny that breaking boxes, which yield weapon upgrades, does not increase the meter. What happens when the meter maxes out? Here comes the vampire we saw in the game's intro, one who laid waste to Abby and Jin, Lord Castaneda, and he could be a royal pain to deal with. You can fight him off, which does take a fair amount of strikes for temporary relief. The alert meter returns to 0. The only place the meter reduces is back in the shelter where we bring civilians. But with the loosey-goosey controls, he could be a bit of a pain to deal with, especially if you have others in tow and there are a couple of other enemies afoot. He has a wide-range projectile that will stop us and others in our place. He could bite us or the civilians, charming them. At this point, we have a limited time to get back to the shelter and have Jin remove the bug within them or us. Otherwise, they turn to Nosferatu, and for us, it's game over. Castaneda will get stronger as a vampire the more successful bites he has throughout. This alert system and the vampire's appearance leads to the best, most chaotic, and at times, frustrating moments of Vampire Panic. When you round up a party of civilians, you always have to keep this in mind. Can I get back to the shelter before the meter fills up? You will have to deal with respawning enemies on the way back from where you came. You might want to bypass picking up those mandrakes in the meantime as they add to the alert meter. You can find yourself in awkward situations where your back is against the wall and finding that it's too late. Here comes Castaneda to deal with. In other cases, I would draw him out intentionally if I knew I couldn't make it back in time. Have the civilians hang back as I move forward to try and deal with the vampire. No one is off limits when it comes to citizens. He'll go after anyone, including the children. And no, the children aren't safe from our friendly fire. The best scenario I found to convey this chaos was the time I had escaping the catacombs. I have a family in tow, but in my haste I run over an unstable surface that fills up the alert meter at a moment's notice. So I put this kid down to fight off the vampire as Mary. Go into Dante mode, only to have the kid take a roundhouse kick from Mary into the afterlife. You can tell if a citizen died from your actions. You could check their corpse and it will tell you it was you who did that. So yes, it's not the easiest in saving citizens. First, it's not too bad, but boy does the game ramp things up. To get the best ending, you have to go through New Game Plus and save all citizens. Vampire Panic does juggle that balance between chaos and frustration quite well. You know how escort missions can be. Bringing up Dead Rising again, it's one of the few games that managed to pull it off well. Its chaotic nature can result in some of the game's most memorable moments. The same case occurs for Vampire Panic. To an extent. It's a bit more bare bones, less polished, more loosey-goosey. Smaller enemy counts, but could still share that level of chaos, where I try my best, but would find myself returning to the shelter a few people short. Not everyone would make the trip back, whether that was on me, a random enemy, or Castaneda making an appearance. Few games scratch that same itch that Dead Rising does. Vampire Panic is one of them, to a lesser degree, but still is that same itch. Now, the plot of Vampire Panic is quite minimal. Again, the translation job doesn't help. You'll get a few lines of dialogue from those who save. There is a list in the menu giving a brief description of who they are, 1 or 2 sentences. At first, we'll need to find a way into the castle by finding a secret passage at the back of the shelter. We will come across a ship, which will be our ticket out of here once we gather up the citizens and deal with Castaneda. After making enough progress, Santino from the game's intro will command the guards to kill everyone in town. There was a monster that got loose. There's been an order to have the town burned down by dawn, so we are now on a time limit. Although that timer is very generous. Going into town, we now have to deal with the guards, not monsters. No need to worry about Castaneda making an appearance here, although there are a couple times in the game where he appears regardless of the alert meter, which does feel a bit cheap in the game breaking its own rules. At this point, the game does open up a bit more. Returning to past areas will have new citizens to save. But this is where some further issues arise. There's a common trope I hate amongst games, where you can't pick up certain items until you reach a certain point along the critical path. For example, in the nearby woods, there's an axe we could come across. Can't pick it up until later to save a citizen in the woods to chop down a tree. The ship we came across earlier, it's missing a steering wheel. There's a steering wheel in the castle, one we can't pick up until the game allows us, which at that point, the door locks behind us. We need to put something in its place instead. In the dungeon below the sanctuary, there's a painting on the wall, one we can't grab until the game allows us. With that, we could swap the steering wheel for the painting and leave the room with the steering wheel. I hate when games do this. Granted, it's not like it's easy to forget these items, but still, why not let's pick them up earlier? So we continue to round these citizens as the game gets a bit backtrack heavy. Although at this point with the steering wheel for the ship, we can leave whenever we want. We won't get a good ending, but we get an ending nonetheless. We have the stake now, but still not enough to deal with Lord Castaneda. We need to collect 5 jewels that will allow us to strike him down for good. 5 citizens hold on to them. So I got the list of citizens and... hold on. Didn't I watch one of these citizens get knocked down into the abyss by an enemy in the catacombs a while back? Yes, I did. And looking through my list of citizens, looks like a couple of others who had these jewels died a ways back. Well, then I didn't do the best of jobs of making multiple saves at Jin's shelter. Well, shit. There goes the good ending. I can't fight Castaneda this way, so let's round up the civilians and leave with what we have. Mary decides to stay behind as the kingdom lays ruin to Incel. But still not enough. Castaneda still lives. So there you go, it's a bummer. There is also an additional mode where you get to play as the vampire, go around the area and suck the lives out of these citizens. Then there's getting the best ending through a New Game Plus where you have to save everyone. There isn't much on this game, as mentioned. There's not even a Wikipedia page, but the channel Broken Controller did a video on it. He does cover those extra modes and true ending in detail if you want to see how that looks there. I threw in the towel well before that. I did try to debug my way around to no avail, so if you do play this game, be aware of who dies, then keep multiple saves. I'm usually pretty good at that, but for whatever reason, I didn't do a good job of it here. Wrapping up, if you enjoy games like Dead Rising, give Vampire Panic a try. It's not the same level of polish or quality, but it does have its moments. A tucked away title that should have gotten more of a spotlight amongst the never-ending PS2 library. Its fan translation could have used a few more reviews and passes, but at least it is playable. It's one of the few games I've come across that scratch a similar itch to Dead Rising. If you're looking for those kind of experiences, do give Vampire Panic a shot. Just be careful with your friendly fire and your saves if you do. Thanks for watching. A like and subscribe if you're not done so. Special shout out to the Boulder Punchers who give extra support to the channel on Patreon, YouTube memberships, and one-time donations. For those in the complete global saturation tier, American Boot, Flan Nagel. For those in the thank you for your patronage tier, Tom Terrible. For those in the now this is Boulder punching tier, Ethan, James Warner, Cray, the Madman in Waco, Natu, the original Narcisse Diet Thick Dew TM Neo Edition. For those in the Jill Sandwich tier, Angel, Benji, Benny Winterdawn, BBF in Bloxburg, Darkrod 99, Dragonfang Studios, James Kilgore, Leonard Aronson, Logan Lepin, Mad Morpheus Gaming, Mikal B, Nico Pero, Sam Jones, Squid Vicious, Strababina, Vinyl Morpheus, Will Han, and Zin. Now for the post-video Q&A, those in the Jill Sandwich tier and higher can ask these questions. From Flan Nagel, between localized and Japan exclusives, which camp has more games you enjoy and can you name a favorite from each? There is something about these Japan exclusive titles, like a bit of a forbidden fruit. Now I can't read or speak Japanese. I know there are other channels that cover Japanese curiosities due to their understanding of the language. For example, Dungeon Chill, he's covered several games without English translations. I'm always glad to see games that look enticing that get one, like this one here, Vampire Panic. I've covered a few like these on the channel. I'd say Germs is my favorite, then Mizurna Falls. Growing up playing Secret of Mana 2 for the SNES with the translated ROM was one of my favorites. It was probably the first translated game I played. Very much had that forbidden fruit feeling to it. There are more I probably plan on covering in the future, actually maybe even sooner than you might think, but we shall see on that front. Thanks for the question, Flan Niggle. From DarkRod99, hi Boulder, hope you're doing well. I was wondering, how do you come about deciding what game is next in terms of doing a video for? I find curious you decide to do a video about Vampire Panic. A game when searching in Google is a Japan exclusive, apparently haha, which is unexpected. Also, when the video about Soma, I've been eager for video of one of what I consider being one of the best sci-fi horror games of all time. Love to hear your thoughts about it. Anyways, take care as always, keep up the videos. Thank you for the question, DarkRod99. So the first one, for deciding what to do a video for, I like to say it's at the whims of whatever interests me at the time, whatever tickles that curiosity. I've gotten to the point now where I've covered most of these survival horror mainstays, but beyond, I guess, a lot of the more modern streamer bait titles, which don't really, I find, any appeal to that. So I've been having a lot more fun going off the beaten path, like with Vampire Panic here. I've had cases where I have videos planned out for the coming months, then I'll come across a game that grabs my attention and that shifts things around. Looking back, I can't recall how I came across Vampire Panic. Was it a YouTube video? Was it something else? I mean, the game doesn't have a Wikipedia article even. Something about it grabbed my attention. The notion of it being similar to Dead Rising played a role. There's always something fun about covering something that doesn't have a lot of coverage, YouTube or otherwise. As far as Soma goes, I liked it, but it didn't grab me or engulf me the way it has for others. Maybe it's something I need to give another playthrough, but it's a game I haven't given much thought of covering on the channel. Again, it's possible my curiosity can change and I do revisit it. Don't expect anything on it anytime soon, but thank you for the question, DarkRod99. From Ghana Barrage, have you played any of the older PS1/PS2 Evil Dead games, and if you have, would you ever make a video about them? I think that would be cool, with 2 exclamation points. Ghana Barrage, thank you for the question. Funny you mentioned Evil Dead. Last summer or early fall, I did consider looking at Evil Dead Hail to the King, the first title, the one on Dreamcast and PS1 from the year 2000. I did play that one for, I think I played the Dreamcast version. Played it for about 30 minutes and realized, no, this is not going to be a good game to cover. Was not a fan of it whatsoever. And I know there are the other games. I think there's 3 or 4 other Evil Dead games in the franchise, but I haven't given those much thought. Covering games from horror movie franchises is a space I haven't really dabbled in much. I did cover the first Saw video game last summer, as well as one based on The Ring, although that was more in line with the book series and predated the Western version of the film. Again, if one does look interesting enough or grabs my attention, I would consider it, but after that first experience with that Evil Dead game, Hail to the King, that killed any interest I had in covering it. So thank you everyone again for the questions. Again, if you'd like to support the channel further, consider joining Patreon or as a YouTube member. You can also do one-time donations through Super Thanks or Ko-fi. We'll see you again in the next video, which, unless I have a change in plans, will have us dealing with invisible monsters in outer space. See you then.